Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Coaching. My name is Kevin Britz, executive coach and trainer and international leadership facilitator and host to the Lunchtime series, where we add value to people's lives, happening every day at 12 on ebizradio.com. Today we're chatting to director and coach of life skills coaching consultants, who says one of the greatest joys of my life is having deep conversations, and as a coach I get to do that. Please welcome Jaki Wasike-Sihanya. Hey Jaki, how are you doing?
Hi, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to what we're going to be talking about. But before we get stuck into it, don't you want to tell us more about you? Give us some background on where you're from and how you got to starting this wonderful life of coaching.
Kevin, thank you. That's actually a question that I quite enjoy answering. I'm a life and leadership coach based in Nairobi, Kenya. And this is something that I have been doing for the last 10 years. But I have also a background in the corporate world. I worked for more than 20 years in the corporate sector for national companies in roles that covered various parts of Africa, Eastern, Central, Southern, and Western Africa. And so this time in the corporate sector has actually given me some very great insights into how people function and in the interplay between people and markets and profits and, performance, leadership, and all those things.
Yeah, fantastic. And I know that I know a lot of people go to get to doing a coaching position purely based on the fact that they do have a lot of experience working in the corporate industry. But what I want to, when we chatted about this first, I know that you wanted to share with us quite a significant topic of discussion and such a useful topic, and so many people and so many coaches use this process. But I think, I love the take that you have on it. But don't you want to preface what we're going to be chatting about today?
Yes, Kevin. Today, I really want to speak about the idea of vision-based coaching, because that is the approach that I use mostly in my coaching. But I also just want to share with you my own experience with personal vision, because as I mentioned, I have been coaching for 7 years, but it is only in the last 3 years that I started coaching full-time. And so this transition is quite remarkable to me for 3 reasons. And the first reason is that I transitioned into coaching full-time at the time that I had planned to. For several years, I used to tell myself, when I turn 50, I want to start working for myself. Mm-hmm. And this is exactly what happened. The year that I turned 50, I also moved from being an employee in the corporate sector to working for myself in my leadership, in my coaching business. But the second thing about this transition is that I was prepared. I actually transitioned into a business that I had created 7 years earlier. Back in 2010, when I was doing my coach training, I took a module called the Business of Coaching. And as a result of that, I created a business plan for a coaching business. And then I implemented it. So I set up a business that I was operating as a side hustle for a few years before I went into it full-time. But you see, the most important thing for me is that back then I had a vision for my own coaching business. And so this transition was actually my personal vision coming to life.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. I think, a lot of the time, and it's we as coaches, we know why it works and why it works so well. But I think, some people still have the idea that putting a vision out there, it's they also attach the I'm not good enough, or I won't ever be able to achieve that kind of part of it, and yet it's such a significant tool in how we set it up, right? But what I want to know from you is what is vision-based coaching? Like, if you're taking that approach, what is that, and how does that play out throughout your coaching sessions?
Vision-based coaching is actually based on, or it draws from something called intentional change theory. And this theory, to put it very simply, this theory stipulates that when a person focuses on his or her future aspiration, they are able to consolidate all the resources available to them. And when I talk about resources, I'm talking about intellectual resources, physical, neurological, mental. People are able to consolidate all these resources into achieving that future state. And just to give you an example, Kevin, I don't know if you have ever been in a situation where you really, really wanted something. Maybe you're thinking of buying a car and you're thinking of buying, a certain brand, let's just say brand X. And all of a sudden, you notice brand X in the traffic. You meet people who work at brand X factory. You hear people discussing the benefits or the pros and cons of brand X. I mean, suddenly it just seems to be all over you and all around you, and you're just sort of consumed by it. So focusing on your future state, focusing on your future aspirations actually helps you to really focus your energy, your intellect, and just about everything that you have into that future. And so in coaching, a vision-based approach helps you to be very intentional about imagining and articulating that future. And that future, I mean, there's no right or wrong. It's really what you want for yourself, how you see yourself in the future, how you imagine yourself in the future. And the way you articulate it, you could perhaps create a vision board, or you could just write it up in your journal. And if you do that, and then on top of that, talk about it to someone, then you increase your chances of achieving that vision, because speaking to someone about it actually creates some kind of accountability. And so this is actually what vision-based coaching is, really just using that power of an aspirational future to drive you forward.
You mentioned intention, and I love this intentional change theory. Don't you want to just give us an insight from your perspective, what intention is? A lot of the times we understand when people speak about it, but when we have to have the association of intention, people don't associate with what that means. They very, very often have this disassociated state that they kind of put it over there. But yet when you kind of get your brain wrapped around what is the intention of what it is you're wanting to create in your vision, don't you just want to speak to us about how you share that and how you get people to understand intention?
Yes, Kevin. The thing about intention is that, first of all, it's something that you want. And you recognize it as something that you want. And you recognize it as something that you can see or you can picture in your mind. But in addition to wanting it, is being very conscious about the choices that you make that increase the chances that you are going to get it. So I may want to become a better public speaker, for example. So I recognize public speaking as a skill. Perhaps maybe I recognize certain people who speak the way I want to do, the way I want to speak, and I try to learn that skill. But in addition to that, I specifically make a certain effort. Maybe I sign up for certain classes, maybe I have practice sessions. So it is more than just the thing that is in your mind, but it's also all the actions that you take in order to achieve that thing.
Absolutely. I think what also resonates with me very often is people have a lot of book knowledge. I come across of many executives who have a lot of book knowledge, but the moment you ask them, so tell me what the behavior looks like, what is the action you're taking? There's a kind of disconnect, right? And it's so important to be able to follow it up with going, well, this is my intention. This is what I am in aim of doing. And these are the associated behaviors that I will have in association to this vision, to this drive that I'm making, right? But don't you just want to expand a little bit also on the emphasis of personal vision? In terms of facilitating the expansion and helping people get, past maybe a limited kind of way of thinking around it. You mentioned increases of your energy, learning orientated goals, and really getting your goals in place, but also that reinforcement of self and how to do that. Don't you want to just share more insight of that and expand it for us?
Yes, indeed, Kevin. You see, coaching is really about helping people to develop. And the thing is that people actually develop in the direction of their dreams. Nobody wants to develop in the way that makes them feel weaker or feel less good about themselves. And that is why vision-based coaching focuses on a client's personal vision. So the emphasis on the exploration and the articulation of your ideal self, because your personal vision is about really being your best self in one way or another. Sometime in the future, you're not there yet, but this is something that you're looking forward to. That is really what drives your development as a client. And it helps to put together your goals together with a long-term vision. And these two things combined actually help to build emotional commitment to doing whatever it takes to that is like, maintaining a certain effort, sustaining a certain effort towards whatever it is you want to achieve. And it is in this enduring effort that you actually accomplish change, that you actually accomplish personal change. So the emphasis on personal vision actually does 4 things, and you have already mentioned those 4 things actually, Kevin. The first thing is it does what we call identity expansion. It helps you to see yourself as more than you are today. There is more to me. Perhaps there is untapped talent. Perhaps there are unexpressed desires. Perhaps there are skills that you could develop and that you haven't developed. And when you realize that you could be more than you are today, you actually get more energy to change. You want to try out all these possibilities because suddenly you realize, hey, actually, there is more to me than meets the eye today. That gives you energy. And because you have energy to change and you recognize that you're here today, but you want to be there tomorrow, you sort of then create learning goals. Because for you to move from this state to that state, you have to start perhaps thinking differently about yourself. You have perhaps to develop new habits. And then those new habits become new behaviors. And this is how you change. So there's always an element of learning, and so that you can develop yourself into the person you want to be. And then the fourth thing about, emphasizing personal vision, Kevin, is that then it forces you into some sort of personal discipline, or what we call a self-regulatory stance. Because once you are aware of the things that you want to achieve, or once you're aware of the way you want to behave, then you are more likely to stop yourself and ask yourself if the way you're behaving or the way you're thinking or the way you're acting actually helps you or hinders you from achieving what you want to be. And I'd like to just use the metaphor of a journey to illustrate this, Kevin. Yeah. I'm sure that you have traveled, perhaps you've gone on holiday somewhere. And I think one of the first decisions that you make when you want to go somewhere is to decide where you're going. You have to decide your destination. Yes. And once you have decided your destination, then other decisions sort of just fall into place. You decide, okay, you can then decide, how am I going to travel there? There are some destinations that you can only go by air, for example. There are some destinations, maybe you have an option of different ways to travel there. And then you look at how long do you want to spend getting there? And then you may look at how much money do you want to spend traveling there? Then you may look at what accessories do you need? For example, what kind of clothes do you need? And this is based on the weather over there. And so you see the destination decision, on the one hand, it eliminates certain choices. Once you have decided you want to travel to to Johannesburg, you are not going to think about how to travel to London because that's not where you're going. But at the same time, it also makes it easier for you to make other choices. And so your personal vision is like the destination that you have chosen. You have decided you want to travel north. There is no need for you to look at south. And that also means that you can put all your energy into traveling northwards.
Yeah, I find it so beautiful that you use the metaphor, because one of the metaphors that I often use when speaking to clients is, it's very difficult for you to drive down the highway looking in your rearview mirror. You know, so, and when you say it, when you give people a bit of a metaphor, they kind of go, oh goodness, yes, because very often part of driving that new behavior, part of driving that action in your world and taking steps towards the vision you want, it definitely requires you to start focusing on where it is you're going and not what happened in the past.
Exactly.
Yes, we need to learn from the past. We need to take from the past. We have to understand and maybe even digest it a little bit. But it is definitely not going to be your support structure heading towards this vision. One of the things that you do mention, which I absolutely love, is emotions. Having the emotion of what this feels like. I'm sure, from your perspective, do you often also find that when you ask people, so this vision that we're creating, when you are there, what is the emotion you feel? And often my clients, they've never been there. They don't know what the emotion kind of feels like. They know that it's this dream, but again, disconnected and disassociated from their dream, and just they know that it's something they want, but there is no actual emotional connection to it. But the moment you add that, it creates that additional energized feeling about that forward-looking kind of perspective, right? So I mean, is that something that you've come across? Because for me, it's definitely something that I've noticed often with people's emotional connection to vision.
Absolutely, Kevin. I find that for a lot of people, when they are thinking about their future, it is easier for them to describe where they are, perhaps describe what they are doing. But I find that if they can place themselves in that future and feel what they are feeling in that future, it becomes all the more powerful. So definitely, emotion is a big part of it. And if you can connect to the emotion of that future, then you have even more energy to do everything that you can to get there.
Absolutely. It's so beautiful. One of the things, Jackie, I'm just looking at the questions that we have here. One of the information sets that you share with us is, what clients benefit from visioning? And I must preface, or at least what's not preface is the wrong word. I must bring attention to the way that you set that up. Visioning. I don't think people ever consider visioning as a verb, as an action word. They kind of think, oh, the vision is the vision. It's sort of the thing, and but yet it is a visioning. It becomes it's an actual thing you have to action. You have to do it. So I find that the way that you put that is really interesting. But what clients do? What kind of clients benefit from visioning?
I think, Kevin, that any coaching client would benefit from visioning if they're working with a coach who can help them to do that. And perhaps it makes more sense for me to just share with you two examples of clients or kinds of clients that I normally work with.
Please.
The first set is really people who are facing a transition of some kind. And one example of that is students who are preparing to sit for exams. And these students are at that stage of their lives where those exams mark maybe the end of schooling, or the transition to a higher level of schooling, or perhaps it's the beginning of a career. And what visioning does for students is it helps them to see their results, to see their exam results in the future. But more than that, it helps them to think about what those results can help them become. And I find this is very useful for students. And students have said this to me because just by picturing how those results will help them in one way or another in the future, they say that it takes away the pain of studying because they know, okay, I will be compensated in the future. And it also helps them to really look at the way they are behaving, the way they are using their time currently, and how that might affect the way they are feeling in the future. So this is also an example of the identity expansion that I was talking about. Today you're simply a student and you're a candidate facing exams in a few weeks or a few months, but in the future you could be so much more. And this is very energizing for students. The second type of client that I often find myself working with are really executives, and usually executives in their mid-career. And these executives are often maybe dreaming about a promotion, or perhaps they want more leadership, or they want more responsibility or more recognition, or perhaps they're actually looking for more enjoyment in their work. And what I do with these people, again, is to help them to picture themselves in the future. Some people go as far as, picturing themselves giving a presentation in front of the board of directors. And then they start asking themselves, what do I need to work on now so that on the day I am giving that kind of presentation, I come out, I show up as an expert, I show up as perhaps inspirational, I show up as experienced and that kind of thing. And then again, this leads to a conversation about all the things that these people need to work on, including what they believe about that future. Because Kevin, we've talked about behaviors and actions, but it's also very important for people to think about what they believe about that future. So what do I mean by this? If you're thinking that in the future you want to be recognized as, a really successful leadership coach, just as an example. But then somehow inside of you, you're thinking, but I'm not such a good speaker, or I'm not so good with social media, or, nobody from my country has ever become internationally known. That little conversation at the back of your head can actually hold you back. So visioning also helps to bring out beliefs that might be holding you back from that ideal future that you are looking at. So when I work with my clients, I actually take them through a 4-step process. And the first thing is really just discovering that ideal self and that ideal future and articulating it. And I really want to emphasize the articulation part.
Yes.
How do you see it? How will you recognize it when it arrives? Describe it in whatever way you want that has a meaning for you. Yeah. And then I also help them to assess the difference between the real being where you are today, and the ideal being the future. And very often people sometimes find that maybe there's a skill gap, perhaps there is an issue with what they believe in, or perhaps it's just an issue of consistency. And then the third thing is I help them to formulate a learning agenda, or what sometimes in business speak is called a plan of action. What are you going to do in order to close that gap? And then the fourth thing is really just helping them to practice and experiment with these new behaviors, these new habits that they are talking about, and then refining them. If something doesn't work, how do you change it so that it works better for you? But I think the most important thing is to really help them, to support them, to consistently make the choices that drive them closer and closer to that ideal self.
So I love the fact that you have such a beautiful process for that, because I think, when you break it down like that, it also gives a bit of a roadmap to how to go through this transformation and how to actually get to that vision that you're talking about, or that you'd like to experience. It's so beautiful. So Jackie, at this point, we could just talk forever. I'm absolutely loving it. If you could leave us with some practical tips on what people could do to really take action on their vision today. You've already shared so much, but if you could leave us with some some tips for the viewers and the listeners, what would that be?
Kevin, really, it's just emphasizing 4 things that I think I have already spoken about. The first one is really express your desire for the future in some way, one way or another. I like to give the example of somebody who wants to eat a mango, and then they go and sit under a mango tree.
Yeah.
You're not going to eat a mango that way. So you have that desire to eat a mango, you have that desire to do something, but you have to climb the tree. So express your desire, yes, but then also think about what do you need to do in order for that desire to become a reality. And sometimes, as I said, that means doing some kind of assessment between where you are today and where you would like to be tomorrow. And if we talk about climbing a tree, I mean, some people need to learn how to climb a tree. So if that's what you need to do, then that is what you're going to need to do. But then I also encourage you, when you decide that you want to start behaving differently, or when you decide that you want to become more aware of your thoughts so that you focus on empowering thoughts, do it regularly and consistently. Because that's the only way that you're going to see whether or not it is working for you. And if it is not working for you, then you can always change it, And most importantly, Kevin, and this is especially so for people who are, maybe doing well in their careers and maybe just wanting to tweak something here and there, ask for help. I mean, that is why coaches like you and I exist. A coach will really help you to work through that process of articulating your vision, of creating that learning agenda, of practicing new behaviors that will take you closer to that. And your coach will provide for you a safe space. Your coach will encourage you. Your coach will support you. Your coach will affirm you. So don't be shy about asking for help so that you can achieve that desired future.
I love that you say that, because my next question was like, can you share with us why people should go, why everyone should get a coach? I have a few that I speak to all the time, and definitely when I'm struggling with stuff, I have a coach that I pick up the phone. I'm like, I need to talk to you. So, I love that you share that. And I love that, you touch on the importance of coaching, because that's what we do. And that's what we're passionate about. We want to be able to encourage and engage and uplift, and that's what we like doing. We love that kind of work, right? So, Jaki, if we want to find out more about who you are and where we can touch base with you, check you out online, where do we go? Where can we get hold of you?
Kevin, I think the best place for anyone to find me is to look up my website, lifeskillscoaching.co.ke. I am also on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, Jaki Life Coach. And people can always reach me on any of my social media handles.
That's fantastic. So just to reiterate, guys, all the information that Jaki's mentioning now will be shared in the description box below. And please check out every Wednesday on ebizradio.com. Goes out live at 12 o'clock and 12 o'clock South African time, I must emphasize. But Jaki, thank you so much for chatting to us. And thank you for making the time. It's Jaki Wasike-Sihanya. And you can check out her website, guys. It's going to be in the description box. Jaki, thank you so much for joining us today. And I absolutely loved the time spending some time with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin, and all the best.
And you. Chat to you soon, Jaki. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
All right.